Hello and welcome. My name is Dr. Calliope, and I'm going to be administering your examination today, as I understand it. As I have in my notes here, you are just looking for a full body medical assessment. Is that correct? Good. Okay. So, I'd love to get started by firstly starting at your head and working my way down the body. So I'd like to just take a look at the scalp. Feel the contours of the head. Let me know if there are any tender spots, if anything's itchy, painful, we're looking for it all. I'm just going to guard my fingers through the hair. Skin. Make sure there's not any redness, that there's no sign of injury. There aren't any lesions on the skin or skin abnormalities. Just feeling the quality of the hair. And contours of the skull. Okay, that feels just fine. So let's take a look at your ears. Let's bring in the otoscope. I'm going to pull the ear up and back, and then we're just going to take a little peek at the inside of the ears here. So, have you been having any issues with the ears lately? Any hearing loss? Any itchiness, pain, anything of that sort? Okay, good. And now the other side, there we go, move my clipboard out of the way. Okay, and we can just get a good look at this ear. So the otoscope here allows me to look at the ear canal, tympanic membrane, a little bit of the internal ear, just a bit. So nothing looks blocked or red, injured or irritated. Looks pretty good. So, let's just look at the outsides of your ears. So, not seeing anything, but just a little bit of a tingling. Just a little bit of a tingling. Okay. Good. any abnormalities. I did take a little feel behind the ears when I looked at your head. And there aren't any lesions lurking back there. So, no pain or anything? Okay. And when did you have your last hearing assessment? Okay. It's been a bit. Okay. Well, let me see. I have my notes. Yeah, no, it has. Okay. You didn't have any concerns then, so we don't necessarily have to recommend one right now, but we're going to keep that in mind, okay? Okay. So, for the eyes, I am going to do a little testing and then a little bit of inspecting. So, let me grab my light here. Give that a moment to just warm up. And then I'm going to have you follow my light around using only your eyes without moving your head. Okay? Alright, so can you see this clearly? Okay, if you could just follow this over here. Good, and down. Up. Down. Up. Good. Back to the middle. Over. Up. Down. Up. Down. Up and down. Wonderful. Back to the middle. Let's go up, down, up, down, and up, up, down, and down. Okay, keep following this as it comes in, out. Good. In, and out. In, and out. Okay, let's just switch to the other side. In, and out, in, and out. Good. Okay. Now just stare right at my nose here. I'm going to bring the light in one side, then the other. This is called the swinging light test. Good. This checks for a defect in your pupils. Okay. Now if you could keep staring straight ahead. And I'm just going to check your consensual, direct, consensual response. Consensual, direct. Good. Consensual. 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 Direct. Wonderful. Now, let me take a peek at your eyes. So I might just touch around the eyes. Let me know if anything is painful or tender. I'm going to be very gentle. Just feeling the orbital bone here. Good. Let's just check those lacrimal glands, little tear ducts here, and the sclerae, the whites of the eye, irises, the colored part, pupils, the black part. Okay, and I'm going to have you look up, and I'm going to pull your eyelid down so I can look at the inside of that. Look up. Look up. Good. Okay, and look down. Good, just look down. Okay, pink and moist there, not irritated. And look up. Good. Just keep looking up. Yep. And look down. Look down. Excellent. Okay. So, lastly, pupillary response. Just look at my nose here. Okay. Alright, we're just going to bring the light in and just check that the pupils react appropriately to the introduction of light. Good. Okay. Let's just jot that down. And continue on. Looking here, looks like you have had a recent eye exam, and that came back normal. Okay. So we have no need to recommend that again for a couple years. Do a little detour, and we're going to look at your sinuses and your lymph nodes. So I'm going to press on your sinuses. Let me know if it's painful at all. Okay, that was the frontal sinuses. These are the maxillary. Anything? Okay, so now I'm going to tip tap on them. Let me know if it's painful. All good? Okay. Good. Good. Okay. Now, lymph nodes here. We're going to start at the back of the head. And then I'm just going to move forward. So we've got one behind the ears, right around right here, and one in front of the ears. Just going to move down to the tonsillar nodes. Okay, submental and submandibular, the underside of the jaw. Good. And then we have our cervical nodes in the neck here. Good. Just going to feel those. The major landmark here is our SCM muscle, this big guy that pops up when I turn my head. It's going to be our main landmark to help us find these. And then we're going to come all the way down to the supraclavicular nodes here. Okay. And those feel just fine. Everybody feels just fine. So, next I'm going to look at your nose, your mouth, and your throat. Let me grab a couple bits. And we'll start by taking off the speculum. We don't need that for the nose. Now if you tip your head back. Okay, and I'm going to get a little up close and personal. We're going to look inside the nose. So, there we are. Now a lot of the rest of the examination doesn't actually need very much participation from you. Not as much as, say, the eyes, for example. So, I can narrate what I'm doing. That's what I typically do. But if you'd like, I can chat about a different topic. Okay? Alright. Have you open your mouth. Okay, I'm going to start by just looking at your teeth. So, most people are familiar with one particular human species besides our own, right? Those are Neanderthals. We've known about Neanderthals since about the 1850s. And Neanderthals are sometimes, depending on what you're looking at, are sometimes a sister group with us, Homo sapiens. But that's a complicated issue. And I'm going to have you lift your tongue to the roof of your mouth. But instead of having the sometimes dyad, sometimes not, of Neanderthals and Homo sapiens, we actually had the big three. The last three human species. I'm going to have you put your tongue down and stick it out. Good. So, about 15 years ago, we learned of the existence of another human species called Denisovans. If I could have you just say "ah" for me. Okay, the palate. Okay. And you can go ahead and close your mouth. Now, Denisovans. We found them from little bits and pieces of bone. Really, if you look at what all was
like gravel, basically. We found all these bits and pieces in Denisova Cave, Siberia, Russia. Okay, now we're going to move on to the neck. And because Denisova Cave is in Siberia, because it's so cold, scientists wondered if we could get DNA off of the fossil pieces. And we had just sequenced the Neanderthal genome, so it was a very exciting prospect. I'm going to put this on your carotid artery. I'm going to have you take a breath in and just hold as I listen to the artery. So take a breath in, hold, another breath in, hold, okay, and exhale. And we were able to get DNA from these bits, and I imagine we were expecting Neanderthal bits, but we found something, DNA, we had never seen before, ever. I'm going to just palpate the carotid artery now. I'll just feel the quality of that. And so, in addition to that, we had learned that Homo sapiens are not pure Homo sapiens, and many of us have 1 to 4% Neanderthal DNA. While when we found Denisovan DNA, well, some people have up to 4 to 6% Denisovan DNA. Considering that Neanderthals started going extinct about 40,000 years ago, and were definitely extinct by 28,000 years ago, that tells us that maybe Denisovans were around longer. So let's take a look at the trachea now. So this might be a bit uncomfortable. I'm just going to make sure this is midline. And some genetic evidence. I think this might be an outlier, but the key is replication to seeing if it's legit. Some estimates put it as late as 15,000 years ago. So Denisovans would have been the last other human species around, but people generally consider it to be about 30,000 years ago is a better estimate. I'm just going to put my hands or my fingers along the throat here. I'm going to have you swallow so I can feel the thyroid. Okay, so I'm just going to put my fingers here. If I can have you take a dry swallow. Good. Okay. If I can have you turn your head so I can look at the sternocleidomastoid muscle. Have you just turn there. So Denisovans are a weird one because when we discovered them, as far as we knew, we only had these tiny bits of bone. I'm talking like this much of a long bone or a snippet of a finger. Not very good quality material at all. Have you just turn the other way? Good. But here was a really cool little bit. So we know because we have DNA from other hominins in terms of human evolution being anyone on the human line after the human chimpanzee split about 7 million years ago. Hominin in general means panins and humans rather, which is chimpanzees and bonobos, panins, and humans, but that's not how it's used in human evolution terms, paleoanthropology. Now I'm going to look at the chest. We'll examine the heart and the lungs. So because we have DNA from other people, I'm just going to feel around the valves of the heart. We'll feel for heaves and thrills. So we have DNA from other people, which means that our ancestors had families or one-night stands with other humans, because here's the big kicker of paleoanthropology. Humans love humans, regardless of species. It's actually a big problem trying to figure out who came from who and how everyone's related because of that, because our genes are all so mixed up. So I'm going to feel for thrills now. The flats of my fingers. So obviously there were hybrid people, right? And there were a few specimens that people believed were Neanderthal sapiens hybrids, but this is based on morphology or the appearance of the anatomy, appearance of the bones, and we can't confirm it genetically. And the age of some of these, like you have School 1 and the Lapido child, for example, these fossils don't make a lot of sense temporally to be an actual hybrid, but they certainly could be an example of gene flow between Neanderthals and Homo sapiens. I'm going to be percussing the chest now. So I'm just going to tap along here. Just gotta listen. We do actually have fossils that have a lot more Neanderthal DNA than modern humans do, telling us that they had a more recent Neanderthal ancestor, and those are Awase 1 and Awase 2. One of them has about 6%, one of them has 6 to 9% Neanderthal DNA. Okay, I'm going to listen to the lungs to start. I'm going to have you breathe in and out. Breathe in and out. Breathe in and out. Breathe in and out. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. Listen to the heart now so you can breathe normally. So question was, where are all these hybrids, right? Well, in Denisova Cave, we found our first genetically confirmed human hybrid, first generation. But they being a girl, and she's nicknamed Denny. Denny had a Neanderthal mother and a Denisovan father. Okay, so I'm going to listen to the abdomen now. Just keep breathing normally. But Denny's age didn't really match up with any of the other fossils, so she's probably the only member of her family group in that cave. So we can't tell anything about family dynamics, if her parents stayed together, if it was a one-time thing. We don't know. But for a very long time, all we knew about Denisovans came from these scraps of fossils. Okay, I'm just going to percuss along the abdomen. Good. So, there wasn't a lot we could glean from Denisovans. We knew their DNA, but we couldn't tell a lot about the human themselves. We don't have great material for postcranial specimens, which is anything below the head. Okay, good. And let's go ahead and just do a little bit of palpation on the abdomen. So this might be a little uncomfortable. Do let me know if it's painful, though. It shouldn't be painful. So, Denisovans were known as a very enigmatic sort of human. And there were so many questions. And then we found the Jahi mandible. The Jahi mandible is beat up. It's not great. But it was the first genetically confirmed fossil outside of Denisova Cave to be associated with Denisovans. Okay, no pain with any of that? Okay, good. Let me just note that down. Okay. Let's take a look at your arms and your hands. So, now we have our first little bit of a mandible. The Jahi mandible is just a little piece of the bottom jawbone. And very robust. Much heavier than, say, Neanderthal jawbones, definitely from Homo sapiens. Okay, the other arm. Just feeling the skin. Okay. And then we got Pengu 1, which is another mandible. That was connected to Denisovans. But people were really confused about why we had just these bits and pieces of this obviously important hominin. But where are all the good fossils? Where is anything decent? We're just getting these lackluster bits and pieces. Okay, I'm going to have you put your hands so your palms face the floor. there was this phylogenetic analysis, or this family tree analysis conducted on 55 different specimens. You flip your hands over. And it was based on morphology, so based on the appearance of the fossils, and the Jahi mandible was connected to some fossils that are sometimes called the East Asian archaics. So I didn't mention this before, but the Denisovan distribution may be as far east as, or west rather, as Eurasia, but they were definitely in places like Russia, China, Southeast Asia. And they were connected to, I'm going to feel your pulses, they were connected to these other craniums, which are crania that did not have a species assigned to them except for one, because we couldn't figure them out. So we had like the Dali skull, and I'm going to butcher this, but Jinoshan. And I believe the Maba Man was also part of that. The other side here. Just feeling the pulse. And they were connected to Shahi as well as the Harbin cranium, which has its own species designation called Homo longi, or dragon man. And so, based on morphology, Harbin was related to Denisovans, but we couldn't genetically confirm yet if that were true. Now, I'm just going to look at your legs here. Then in 2025, a study comes out that says that they got genetic material from the Harbin cranium, has like a single tooth attached to it. And they got genetic material and they were able to connect it to Denisovans and match Denisovan DNA. Can't remember if it was DNA specifically or if it was proteomics, which is using proteins to get genetic material. Not as good information as DNA, but much better than nothing at all. And so there needs to be more work done to be able to 100% certainly tie Harbin with Denisovans. But if Harbin is Denisovan, then that means probably all these East Asian archaics are also Denisovan, which means that we've actually had their material for a long time. Okay, if I could just have you put your foot up here so I can take a look. Okay. So, based on the crania, what we can tell about Denisovans, again, we can't tell like how tall they are or anything like that. We have, some pieces of long bone, but they're like that big, not very long anymore. And they were built for very cold climates. So Neanderthals were built for cold Europe. Denisovans were built for frigid Siberia. Other foot here. And Homo sapiens, we're all humans. Homo sapiens are a tropical species built for tropical climates since we came from Africa. So the build of Denisovan is basically Neanderthal but more robust, more heavy. Even though they did get as far as Southeast Asia, so they seem to have adapted fairly well. let's go ahead and grab the Trumner hammer and do some reflexes. Now have you put your arm, just rest it on your leg and let your hand go floppy. Okay, we'll do the triceps reflex. Good. And biceps reflex. I'm going to hold on to your elbow here. Now, based on morphology, Denisovans are a sister group with Homo sapiens, which is weird because based on nuclear DNA and proteins, they're a sister group with Neanderthals, with us being the outgroup. And based on mitochondrial DNA, Neanderthals are a sister group with us, with Denisovans being the outgroup. Other hand, or other arm. Good. So, none of these little bits and pieces match up, which might be an issue with methodology. Might be a big detail that we're missing. I'm going to do your knees now. Or, remember how I said humans love other humans regardless of species? Yeah. Our genes, our genetics all got so mixed up that now it's this big tangled ball of yarn that doesn't make any sense when you try to splice it up. Okay. If I could have you put a foot up on my knee, we'll do the Achilles tendon reflex. So there's a lot of weirdness with Denisovans still. But hopefully we have a lot more to work with if we can continue to confirm genetically, ideally, fossils with Denisovans. Connect the two. Okay, you can put your foot down there. Alrighty. Okay. So that is about that. Let me just make sure we have everything. Oh yeah, we didn't even really get into the Homo erectus sensu stricto gene flow with Denisovans that then later pass on things to us. That's a mess. Everything about human evolution is a mess. I mean, we didn't even talk about Homo erectus in general. We didn't talk about the muddle in the middle Pleistocene. It's a lot, but Denisovans, very cool, still very enigmatic. Alright, it looks like I've gotten everything that I needed to get. Did you have any questions at all? Okay, all good. Yeah, everything looks good here, so just in the future we might think about referring you for a hearing examination, but your last one was normal, but yeah, eye exam, couple years, everything else looks just fine. Okay, so I'm just gonna sign off here. And that'll be that. So, I hope you enjoyed the little chat about our sometimes cousins, sometimes sister group, the Denisovans, of which, if they are connected to the Harbin cranium is already called Homo longi. We don't have a binomial name for Denisovans because you need a good representation of what makes a Denisovan a Denisovan. Usually that means a really good cranium, maybe some mandibular material would be good too with that. But since we didn't have that, at least at first, we couldn't give it its own name if it is associated with Harbin. If the ICZN rules so, which I don't know if they have or not, or if they're waiting, then they would then become Homo longi. So, I hope you enjoyed hearing about them, and I'd like to thank you so much for coming in. I hope you have a whale of a day.